Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So we have some more Fallout 76 news today, and it's pretty exciting to say the least. Bethesda have given us a little bit more detail on Wastelanders, which is coming up in the early part of next year. Personally, my hunch leans towards March more than January, but just a feeling there. So I could be wildly wrong, but we're looking forward to it. There's some cool stuff in here. This little bit of information is very much focused. It's not huge, but it's kind of more in depth than anything we've seen so far, and it's really, really cool to have a look at, and I'm very, very excited for it. So let's jump in, take a little look, and pull this thing apart a little bit, because this is really cool. So we have inside the vaults, meet Duchess and Mort. So we've already had over the last couple of posts regarding Wastelanders, a little bit of information about the Wayward Inn and Duchess and Mort. That was the last couple of bits of information we had. We've got a little bit more detail here, a bit more of a deep dive into this location, and a little bit more of an idea of, hopefully, what we can expect on a larger scale across the whole of Appalachia as well. So this is really, really cool to take a look at. So, first things first, we have a nice, big, shiny picture here of the Wayward. And we'll see in a bit more detail when we have a look at the text Bethesda have provided us, but this is just up from the Overseer's camp. I think looking at this picture, the Overseer's camp is more or less straight behind us. To the left of the Wayward here is roughly where that wooden bridge will be. You can see in the top right, that's where Slocum's Joe is. This is a sensible place for a kind of inn, pub, rest stop type affair. There's, I think in all likelihood, partly judging from where this is, and the specific road it's on, its location, all that stuff, seems likely to me that we're going to be seeing people in the region of Morgantown, and also in the region of Flatwoods and Charleston. And this is pretty much halfway between Morgantown and Charleston, so as you may remember from your walk between the two, as a low-level character in the early game, as it currently exists, it's not a short trip. So anybody making that trip in the Wasteland would probably want somewhere to stop, somewhere a bit secure and safe, somewhere to take a rest, possibly pass the night. Still going to be a dangerous wasteland after all, so this is a sensible place for this sort of thing. And what we're looking at here, well, from what it says in the text, this is a place that's been put together by Duchess and possibly a little help from Mort, but doesn't really say so, herself. So I'm curious to see how she's managed to get all this stuff here and drag it up and put it all together. That's something I hope we're going to get to explore. Looks like we've got something around the back of the main structure there, right at the left-hand edge of the screen. So curious as to what might be back there. Looks like some kind of shed, maybe a storage space. Looks like some kind of fabric-type roof there. Hopefully something we'll get to build with ourselves, which we'll be touching on in a little more detail in a moment. Very cool sign out there, clearly improvised. Well, mostly improvised. It looks like she's dragged the sign off something else and liked it and just taken it for herself. That's fine. Nice little veranda there in the centre. Looks like our main way into the main structure. And then we've got a little mobile home type affair on the right there, which I'm guessing, well, from the look of the sign in front of it, is the motel part of it. So you can crash out if you want to. Sign is switched off just at the moment as the place is yet to open. I'm guessing that was a well-timed little bit of photo mode work there, but yeah, that's cool. And obviously it blends quite nicely in with everything that's already there, so it's comfortably on the edge of the road. The riverbank's just behind it. We've still got all the power pylons there, just scattered around and sort of building around that, so that's quite cool. A few little fences, and it looks like a Brahmin trough behind the Wayward sign there, so definitely a lived-in area. She's clearly setting up a very, very permanent location here, Duchess, which is very, very cool. I'm still very curious to see how this is going to fit in with the currently existing story, because we know they're not going to remove that, so it'll be interesting to see how those blend together. And it also looks like there's going to be some stuff relating to Wastelanders going on in the region of Vault 76 as well. So we'll jump into the text and have a look at a little bit more information there when I find my mouse. Apologies, by the way, if my voice is a bit weird today. I've got a little bit of a sore throat, so I do hope you'll bear with me. So, excuse me. Welcome back to Inside the Vault. This week we're sharing a bit more about our upcoming Wastelanders update, including a few details on the starting experience, awesome, and an introduction to Duchess and Mort, who we've featured with previous screenshots. We've also got a brief update for you on the upcoming launch on Steam, and as well as new information on a Purveyor mystery pick event, which is probably the least interesting thing in this whole particular blog post, but we'll get to that later. So, one of the things that's talked about here, the starting experience for Wastelanders, I'm very interested to see how that's going to go. We've got a little screenshot here of somebody presumably just emerging from the vault, and how Wastelanders is going to interact with new players, which is cool. Would love to have some more details on this. I think we'll get more nearer the time. But yeah, how those two are going to come together and interact, I'm guessing you'll be able to run both main storylines. I suppose it's effectively like having two main storylines in parallel. But how well those will blend, I don't entirely know. Saying that, most games with side quests, main stories, yada yada yada, they kind of do blend and they kind of don't, and we're generally okay with that. I mean, heck, look at Skyrim. I never actually finished the main story on that. I was so busy and distracted exploring the world. But there we go. So having two major storylines running concurrently might not be too much of a problem, although it may be a little jarring just to think about it. So, say hello to the Wayward, Duchess, and Mort again. We've shared screenshots from our upcoming Wastelanders update in the past. Some of you might be intrigued by the Duchess and Mort, who happen to be two new characters you will meet early on in your adventures. Given that location, I think it will be very early on. We thought you might like to learn a little more about them and the starting experience in Fallout 76 when Wastelanders arrives. So, another screenshot here. We've got a little sign in the background talking about the Wayward, and it's smack bang on the plaza outside Vault 76 there, so interesting to see that. It's supposed to be a year on from the initial opening of Vault 76, so why would they stick a sign there? It's a bit of an odd choice. Maybe there'll be some changes in the departure from Vault 76 and all that sequence, who knows? If people are still emerging from the Vault, then that would kind of make sense, but at the same time that doesn't fit with the existing story, so maybe it's just a case that a big key location like Vault 76 would see a certain amount of foot traffic, and it's just an advert for that reason, rather. That could make sense from that point of view. We've got a couple of other NPCs here just hanging out. I have to admit, I'm really looking forward to NPCs. I think it's going to give it a much more of a more traditional MMO vibe, or more traditional online game vibe anyway, which is something that I think will work well. Certainly work better than their original plan, which was interesting, but as we well know, didn't pan out quite as well as they hoped. So I think it's going to be very, very cool. So whether you're a new dweller stumbling out of the cozy confines of Vault 76 for the first time, or an experienced wasteland explorer, you may want to stop by the vault and meet Lacey and Isla? Maybe? I'm going to go with that. These curious settlers are on the hunt for answers to questions that brought them to Appalachia in the first place, and might be able to help newer players on their journey. Okay, so I'm guessing these two are our little first step into Wastelanders then, looks like. In exchange for your answers, they will also lead you to the Wayward. And if you don't talk to them at all, the sign probably gives it away anyway. And you're not exactly going to miss this massive place right next to the bridge if you're following the main story as it currently exists either, so... On the other hand, I suppose there's nothing stopping you doing a 180 and going the other direction, so there's that too. I know I did in my very first play session during the beta. I went right instead of left. Because why not? I wasn't alone in that from what I understand. So... Another shot on the Wayward there that we've already seen bigger at the top. Very, very cool. That is really great to see. So, the Wasteland has been evolving since people have begun to return. As you explore, you will find many locations are now inhabited or have been built up as more arrivals seek new lives in Appalachia. One such encampment is the Wayward, a fledgling watering hole not far from the Overseer's camp in the forest. Inside this new instance location is where you will meet Duchess and Mort. So, relating to kind of Fallout first and a lot of other things, people were kind of overlooking the instance thing, which is kind of understandable given that it was mentioned ages ago and they've not really said a lot about it since. As with most games where you have a singular focal point that every player is going to want to interact with, be that an NPC or a switch or anything like that, you've got to manage the fact there are going to be multiple people targeting a single object, person, etc. So instancing is how they're doing this. It's the most logical way of doing it. It's how most games do it, most online games anyway. So, short version from the look of this, once you walk inside the Wayward, you're going to be in there on your Jonesy, unless you're part of a group, in which case your whole squad will move in, presumably. But that's what you'd expect and probably what you'd want. That's the point of playing in a group, isn't it? So, that's cool. It's nice to hear a little bit of information just dropped in there, hopefully in a natural way, and hopefully it'll work in a natural way as well, which is cool. So, we've already seen the shot here of presumably a player, Duchess here, and Mort tucked in the background, our first ghoul. Oh, not of the non-feral variety. Definitely looking forward to meeting him. So, a bit more information on Duchess. We've had a little bit so far, but not a great deal. So she's the stalwart owner and proprietor of the Wayward, which she built and brought into Appalachia in the hopes of providing an inviting atmosphere and stiff drinks for anyone seeking a place to recharge. For a fee, of course. Recently, she's had a string of visitors stop in, asking some very pointed questions and acting aggressively. While she and Mort are more than capable of handling a few troublesome patrons, I'm assuming there's a shotgun behind the bar, they wouldn't refuse a bit of help finding out what these people are, who these people are rather, and what they're after. So, a couple of things here that I'm curious about. Where are we? She's built and brought into Appalachia in the hopes of providing inviting atmosphere, yada yada yada. So she's built and then brought the Wayward here. How the heck has she done that? I really want to know more about how this came into being and how she's put this place together. And I hope that's something we get to explore. I'd imagine it will be something we get a degree of exploration on if they've actually told us that this is a thing. So, fingers crossed, but that could be potentially very, very interesting. With all the games previous to this, the settlements, the locations, they're just pre-existing. They're there. Even the things that have been built up by people, the how is way back in the past. They're well established for the most part, the exception of the settlements you build up in Fallout 4 anyway. So how they actually put these things together is something that we've never really touched on. And it kind of makes sense to do that, being as we're so close to the point where the bombs initially dropped, the war and all that. So it would be interesting to explore that in more detail. So recently she's had a string of visitors stop in, asking pointed questions and acting aggressively. So we've been told in the past that obviously there'll be traditional raiders in the sense of random encounters, people you run into who will want to brutalize you on sight. But there will also be more raider-esque settlements. So raider bases, raider encampments, raider settlements. But many of these, supposedly, from what we've been told, are going to be less like you walk in and they open fire because you walked in the door, and more like these are really harsh settlers who are adapting their nature to the harsh reality they're living in. So they'll be raider-esque, they'll be willing to do more brutal things and much more harsh things because of the environment that they're living in. And that kind of makes some sense. And it's certainly a different twist that we haven't seen before. So looking forward to exploring that. But people asking pointed questions and acting aggressively kind of fits in with that, to my mind. So maybe it'll be something along those lines. Maybe the earliest beginnings of a faction system. We know there is going to be one. Different settlements and things will effectively be their own factions. But at least it sounds like that from what we've been told so far. So this could be the beginnings of that. Maybe a bit of a protection racket that somebody's trying to establish here, you know. Get some cash out of Duchess so they don't come and shoot up her establishment. If she's as stalwart as this would imply, then I don't think she's going to be down for that. I'm willing to bet she has got a shotgun behind the bar. I'd imagine Mort's got a very large stick of some kind as well. So this should be very interesting. A sensible introductory beginning to Wastelanders and the dynamics and systems that are going to be introduced, which is what I'm imagining this will be as a quest. A bit of a tutorial E1-esque one, but we'll see when it actually goes on and when it actually drops. But very, very cool. So, as the Wayward's most loyal regular, Mort spends quite a bit of time there, running up his bar tab and lending a hand to Duchess when needed. Yeah, if he can't pay his tab, she's probably going to make him work it off. Mort's also got a knack for exploring. This is new. He's traversed a large swathe of the forest and has managed to figure out how camps work. Okay. So if you're ever in need of a bit of insight into the surrounding area or a refresher on the camp system, Mort's your ghoul. So, guys somehow apparently found a camp. Could be quite as simple as walking over to the Overseers, to be honest. She did leave hers there. And has a bit of information on how those work. Obviously, Pip-Boy not required to operate this thing. Cool. That is unless he might have a Pip-Boy. We haven't seen his left wrist very closely, so possible. It seems, well, if any of the... excuse me. If any of these two are not a Vault Dweller, my money would be on Mort with him being a ghoul, or former Vault Dweller, but you never know. It's possible that both of them are from, well, the Duchess in particular is from a region where there weren't many bombs. After all, certain places are more targeted than others. That's why we know Appalachia hasn't been bombed into oblivion. Why bomb the countryside? We bomb cities. So, many interesting things to explore there. So, interesting that Mort's going to be providing a bit of a refresher on the camp system. Hopefully there'll be something new and expansive there that we haven't seen before. But if you're new to the game and want a little bit of a pointer in the right direction, I suspect that's part of it as well. probably tying into Bethesda's obvious hope that Wastelanders will bring new players in, people who looked at the basic setup of the game back when it launched and in the 6 months preceding and said, not for me. Now that they're NPCs, they might be thinking that maybe it is a little bit more for them. So a bit more information will be cool for that. So, moving on. If I had to guess, this looks a bit like it might be Spruce Knob, just judging by the green area in the centre top of this particular screenshot, but I could be wildly wrong there. It does look very different from what I recall. Got some bunting up under the gazebo there. Some settlers working on something. Maybe these random pieces of machinery will be getting some function, or we'll be having some explanation as to what some of these things actually are. Maybe some of you guys have figured it out. I certainly haven't. But that would be cool. Or maybe it's just something to have them interact with. Also fine. It brings a little bit of life to the wasteland. Somebody wandering around in the background there as well. Nice little use of the existing environment, though. They're using the bridges. They're clearly set up in the little cabins here. I'm guessing people have turned those into accommodation. Why wouldn't you? Very, very cool. Duchess and Mort are just two of the many people and characters you'll meet during your travels after we've released Wastelanders. One of our main goals with this update isn't just about NPCs and to push your story forward, but to help Appalachia feel much more alive now that people are making their way back into the area. You will not only encounter new faces during the main story, but throughout the game in new encounters, in combat, encampments, and even as they go about their daily lives. So from this we can infer, as I said before, raiders and the like as random combat encounters, possibly even settlers if you happen to alienate them enough. Who knows? Might be cool. And encampments, so random little spots with random people set up who've decided to strike out a little more on their own, perhaps. There's plenty of places where it looks like you've had people who survived in the aftermath of the bombs on their own, little shacks and things like that appear to have been occupied in the immediate years after, even if they're not at the time the game is currently set. So that sort of thing will flesh out the world a little bit more, make it feel less empty, which is cool. And going about their daily lives, that might just simply mean travellers on the roads and things like that, as well as obviously within settlements. So very, very cool. Hopefully it'll make the whole wasteland feel a little bit more bustling, a little bit more believable. And not that an empty wasteland in the back end of nowhere is not unbelievable, but on the other hand, people do live in this area and it didn't get bombed. So with the exception of the Scorched Plague, you'd expect people to be there. So hopefully this will certainly flesh that out a bit more. We believe Appalachia will feel much livelier when Wastelanders launches next year, and we can't wait to see what you think. So as a last secondary thought here, I really am looking forward to this. I'm very, very excited for it. It's something that the next couple of months in the run-up to this are going to be kind of hard to get through in a sense, I think, because this is on the horizon and they're not dropping any new content. And me personally, and I suspect a lot of you guys as well, are very much ready for something new to sink your teeth into, and this big crouching thing on the horizon is very, very exciting. So you know what it's like when you're waiting for something. So, a couple of little updates to tack onto the end of this that are infinitely less interesting than Wastelanders information right now. Steam update. Earlier this year we announced that Fallout 76 would be coming to Steam in 2019. Can't for the life of me remember when, but I do remember something vague being mentioned about it. Since then, we've received questions from some of you who are curious about when this will happen. They've delayed it, is what they're saying here. Our launch on Steam is still on the way, but we've moved it closer to the Wastelanders release in 2020. I can kind of understand why. Bringing people back, getting them to jump in, putting it onto Steam will, bring a few people in that were otherwise not keen on doing it through the Bethesda Net launcher. And doing it closer to Wastelanders will give them more to sink their teeth into. It'll hopefully keep more people around. Just putting these things together makes more sense. It would also have made more sense to do the same with Fallout first, but it is what it is. We don't have additional details to share on this right now, but we'll let you know as soon as we do. Short version, what additional details can you share beyond the date? I don't really know, but yeah. It's coming, it'll be the early part of next year, if you are actually hanging on for that, but I should imagine there's not many of you guys sat here watching this video. Anyway, moving on. Last point, season's greetings from the Purveyor. In case your December calendar wasn't already packed with holiday goodness, and plenty of Santa-suited Scorch to take down, the Purveyor is getting into the spirit of the season with a new mystery pick event starting next Tuesday, December 24th, so literally over the holiday period. Those of you who are willing to put your fate in the Purveyor's hands will be able to select the mystery pick option when browsing her inventory in exchange for 60 script, A mystery pick will give you a completely random 3-star legendary item. So it'll always be 3-star, but it could be armor, it could be a weapon, it could be a melee weapon, ranged weapon, yada yada yada. All the options of the 3 stars will be available rather than narrowing it down, and it'll cost you a bit less as well. Personally, I'd really like to have seen a Christmas sale, especially given that the Holiday Scorched event is dropping a buttload of legendary items, most of them, for me at least, not very good. So we're turning them in for script, we're going to have plenty of that to spend, but they've gone for a mystery pick. I don't really know why, maybe it's more popular than I would expect it to be, but I'm not particularly impressed by this particular type of Purveyor event. Personally, I prefer the sales. There we go. If you happen to want to take the RNG for what it is and go for that, there's your option. Starts midday on Christmas Eve, ends at midday on New Year's Eve in the US. That's the east coast of the US, so we're looking at, 5 p.m. in the UK. So there's your little Christmas sale of sorts. So this is our last Inside the Vault article for the year, but when we return, we're planning to share even more Wastelanders preview content with you. Definitely a good thing. More hype is definitely needed. I hope they're really going to go to town on the hype, because if this is half as good as it might be, as we're hoping it'll be, then it's got a lot of potential for the game, and it could be a really, really good thing. So get that hype going, get people reminded about it, and hopefully get people coming back would be great. Good for the game, good for all of us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the holiday season, and we will see you in the new year. So obviously, as that relates to these particular videos, I'm going to slow things down over Christmas, as I usually do. I usually take about 2 weeks off, but as to whether or not I'll actually take 2 weeks off, we'll see. I'll probably be doing some stuff, but we'll see what actually happens. I want to do a little bit of background work on the channel as well, so we'll have to see how that goes, but things will probably slow down, and certainly these news videos will stop until the new year. Probably the first Thursday of the new year, I would imagine, is when we'll get our next blog post, and next look, hopefully, at Wastelanders. So, all very, very cool. Some very, very interesting stuff about Wastelanders. Some very, very exciting stuff. Much, much looking forward to getting into some of the very cool stuff here. Nice to find out a little bit more about a specific location, and cool to have a few little details in there that we can extrapolate out and infer about how other locations and other individuals are going to work as well. Particularly the reference to the instancing, which is a really tiny little comment dropped in there that is absolutely profound to how Wastelanders is going to work. As I say, if walking into the Wayward, yes, checks the screen again. If walking into the Wayward is going to take you into an instance location, therefore you don't have to fight with everybody else to talk to Duchess, which makes sense, or Mort. The same thing is likely to happen in other settlements, locations, and so on, so we're going to run into a lot more instance locations. Does also mean that we're going to butt up against a lot more locations where you can't build your camp, because after all, you can't then go and block other people from getting in. It's what they want to avoid. It would be a form of griefing, in short. So, good to bear in mind. Very, very cool. Very, very excited for some of this stuff. Really looking forward to exploring the new inhabitants of Appalachia and their lives and the details surrounding that. Very much looking forward to this. It's going to be much more like old school Fallout, or certainly the Bethesda era old school Fallout, not 76 anyway. And yeah, very, very cool. I think it's going to be a little bit more MMO vibe-ish, certainly on the public servers anyway, because you will still see players running around, but taking them out of the way during the instances, which is what a lot of other games do. So yeah, very, very optimistic, very, very interested and cool, and looks like we've got some cool new textures coming in as well from the look of this. Just glancing back at the main building of the Wayward here, the metal sidings on it, things like that. So fingers crossed we'll be getting our paws on some of those for building with. That'd be very, very cool. But I've rambled on for quite long enough, and I need to nip out now before I edit this video, so I will wrap this up and wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. I will, of course, have another video or two before then, but on the off chance you don't catch them, you definitely should catch them. Have a great holiday season, have a great Christmas, or whatever you may be celebrating at this time. If you're not celebrating, have fun anyway. For now, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you found this useful and informative. As always, social media links down in the description if you want to catch up with me over there. Going to put some stuff up on Instagram later, I think, so do watch out for that stuff. Like, subs, etc. if you haven't already, very, very much appreciated. Very, very helpful to the channel. Support is hugely appreciated. Speaking of support, if you really want to support the channel a little bit more directly, you can do so by becoming a channel member. Support is very, very helpful, very, very much appreciated. Going to give that a little overhaul over the Christmas period as well. So you can have a click on the little blue join button and find out a little bit more there, or you can click on the links in the description as well. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.